And welcome everyone to this webinar entitled the Terraform Provider V1 Release. I'm incredibly excited to be joined here by Venk and Dom, I'll be introducing in just a second. Before we begin, my name is John Bristow. I'm from Octopus Deploy, and I'll be your host for today's session. So whether you're joining us live or you're catching the replay later on, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking your time and giving us your attention for this fantastic webinar that we have lined up for you today. Today, we're going to be diving into some exciting updates that we have planned. We have been planning and now we've released for our Terraform provider. We've been building this for an awfully long time. I'm incredibly excited to be here with these two gentlemen to talk about it. So when it comes to Terraform, we've been working on this, as I said, for well over 3 years, if not longer. We've been basically started with a very basic integration, and it's grown into a mature, well-documented, and deeply integrated experience. Our Terraform provider now gives you the power to define and manage Octopus projects, environments, life cycles, and more, all through a combination of text files, etc. You can apply these using, obviously, the Terraform tool. You can do this all via HCL, which is great. This has been a game changer for teams managing Octopus at scale for a long time, and today we're excited to showcase what we're doing to make it even better. So joining me, as I said, are Venk and Dom. Venk is our product manager here at Octopus, who's been guiding our infrastructure as code strategy. He's spent a lot of time talking to teams about how they can manage Octopus into production, and his insights have really helped shape a provider that not only works really well, but makes a real impact for the teams that need it. And alongside him is, of course, Dom, who's a senior software engineer here at Octopus Supply. He's part of our modern deployments team. Dom has been deep into the code. He's helped me understand it. He's built a lot of great things, and he's helped us modernize, obviously, how Octopus does deployments and integrations this way. He's really passionate about developer experience, so it's great to have him here. Before I turn things over, I just wanted to give a couple of housekeeping notes here. Don't worry if you're worried at all, like this is a place that you maybe stumbled upon this inadvertently. You're in the right place. This is our webinars page. You can see we're hosting this one today. We also have the 101 coming up in June, and we also have our State of GitOps webinar. You can find us all up on octopus.com/webinars. So make sure to like and subscribe, make it a bookmark, do whatever it is you got to do to keep up to date. We have a newsletter as well you can check out. And if you happen to jump off the live webinar, don't worry, everything is being recorded. It will be available live and also available on demand here on our YouTube channel, which you can check out at youtube.com/Octopus Deploy. As the kids say, like and subscribe. Anyways, with that, let me go ahead and now turn things over to Venk and Dom, who will guide us through everything that's new and improved relative to the Octopus Deploy Terraform provider. Gentlemen, take it away.
Well, thanks, John, for the incredible intro and all the accolades that you presented us with. And welcome everyone to our presentation on the Terraform provider and its V1.0 release. As John said, we'll be going through some of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of months, as well as giving you a little bit of a heads up on some of the things that are coming along. But we're excited to kind of highlight the bigger changes and showcase some of the things that hopefully have been fixed since the last time you may have used the Terraform provider. A brief kind of history lesson, I guess, is that the Terraform provider was actually written by one of our own customers back in the day and got handed over to us, and it's kind of been sitting around being this awesome little integration that actually Dom and John have been working on, in and out of over the last couple of years, and we finally looked at it and decided to put all our effort into it and bring it up to its V1.0 that it deserves. Cool. Anything to add there, John, on any other history you want me to cover? Or
yeah, I mean, like we've been marching slowly towards a V1 release. I apologize for those folks who have been hanging on for a V1. We had some hard problems to solve, and thankfully we had Dom to help solve them. I wasn't smart enough to solve all the problems. Now, that being said, it should be stated that some of the problems we were trying to tackle in the V1 release were really hard. And we worked on them for a really long time. In terms of the history, the Terraform provider was our forced foray into Go. And in addition to that, it actually led the charge into building the new CLI, which is based in Go. So one of the motivating factors we had was because we were doing a lot of work around the Terraform provider in Go, it actually led to some positive outcomes. It also led to some other tools as well. So, for example, Octolint and some of the stuff that we're doing around AI, et cetera, is leveraging that infrastructure that we have around Go as well. So it actually had a positive effect long term for all of us here at Octopus. I'll step out. You guys can take over. Sorry.
Awesome. Cool. So one of the first most exciting things that we would love to tell you about is that we've added a lot more support for things that are in the Octopus UI. So previously we kind of had this hodgepodge list where we sort of supported things in the UI and we sort of didn't. We've now expanded that coverage to include things like step templates, OpenID accounts, and listening tentacles. And we've only focused on the UI rather than the CLI, just because that's the thing that a lot of you and our other customers have said is important to them. And the ones that we haven't, they will eventually be supported, but we won't get to them in the short term. And of course, as part of all of these upgrades, it'll all be covered in the Terraform Provider documentation. Cool. There's also a couple exclusions that we can't support in the short term or the long term, and they can be found in the provider documentation. Thank you, Dom, for writing all of them up. Awesome. The sort of next big one that I think everyone will be excited for, and is one that we've heard time and time again, is our deployment process resource. The old one was very hard to work with. I know when I first started learning Terraform, as well as joining Octopus Deploy, I tried to write the deployment process resource and got incredibly lost because it's hard to know what properties to include when you're writing the old process resource. It was incredibly hard to maintain over time because of all the state drift issues that happened where you would write the deployment process, you would then come back to it, make no changes, try to run the Terraform plan again, and it would just delete the entire deployment process. Or you go into the UI, make some changes, hit Terraform plan, apply, and then for some reason your deployment process completely reordered itself. So it was a pretty bad experience trying to navigate the old process resource. We've got a new one that we've implemented. It's way easier to find the property values you need for each step. It's super easy now to set up and change the order of the steps, and it works way better with the Octopus UI. You're not going to run into those cases I mentioned before where you just come back, nothing has changed, and your process has just been deleted. So quick overview, the old one is just this giant bag, a property bag with just a bunch of steps. You can't set any of the step order that you want to. In the new deployment process resource, each step is its own resource, as well as being able to set the order of the steps and the child steps. So that makes it much easier for all of you and me to now write all these Terraform code that maintains its order over time and is so much easier to maintain. Cool. So because we've spent so much time on making sure we written like a really awesome new process and step template resource, I'd love to showcase some of the work because I think everyone's going to really love it. And there's a demo by Dom, who isn't doing it live because it is an ungodly hour here in Sydney.
Right. Yep. So I have to show my folks my iPhone here. It's 5 a.m. for all of us here. Okay. Look, we can't do demos at 5 a.m. coherently. So we asked Tom to record the demo, and you'll hear it in his voice. He's a lot more chipper. So I hope you appreciate this. Sorry for the recording. I know it's a classic no-no to do in a demo, but Dom does a great demo here. So we're going to go ahead and let this play now.
Hello, so today I'm going to be showing off some of the new resources within the Terraform provider that will be released in V1. One of these new resources is the process resource. So this process resource is designed to replace the deployment process and runbook process resources. They'll still be around for a bit. You got time to move over to the new process resource, but this one is much better. So the reason why we created the new process resource is the old resources are prone to state drift, showing unexpected changes, instability issues. So we tried very hard to patch the old issues to fix those problems, but no matter what we did, we just couldn't seem to bash the core problem. And the core problem there was that the actual structure of that resource, of those old resources, just don't work with the way that Terraform wants to store things within state. The main confusion was coming that we represent the steps as lists of objects, and not all the fields of those objects will be defined within your HCL file. So if you were to like move the objects around or add a new object in between, objects in this case being steps, Terraform would get very confused and just start thinking that you actually want to update the steps, not replace or move them. It doesn't understand that. So it would start confusing up the state with trying to do this, and it would also confuse server, and it just became a mess. So to fundamentally fix the problem, we had to rethink the way that we define a process within Terraform. So hence the new Octopus Deploy process resource. So as you can see here, I've got a Terraform file that I've started up, and it's very simple. All I got so far is a project group and a project. And on that project, I created the resource for the deployment process. So you can see here, the process resource only takes the project ID. This is saying that I want to define a deployment process for this project. And that's all you really need to create an empty deployment process for a project. So obviously that's kind of useless though. You want to add steps to your deployment process. So next I've added some deployment process steps. So as you can see here on the deployment process steps, they take the reference to the process that we defined above, this deployment process here, and they define the step. So in this case, I'm just defining a run script step. And as you can see, you might notice the step looks, the structure of it is a bit different from the old deployment process and runbook process resources. So properties are the old step properties that used to be on that deployment process, if you're familiar with it. And execution properties are the properties that used to live on the action. The reason why we did this is because this allows us to flatten the action and the step into one resource, so that we don't have an array of actions existing on the step. There's still a way to define child steps, and I'll get into that later. But for now, this is just how you can define a nice flat step. So I defined 3 steps here. I got Dom Pizza step 1, step 2, and a step 3. And they're all pretty simple, just run script steps. And then after I got those, I've got the new deployment process step order. So here, the deployment process step order is how we define the order of steps in a deployment process. So in this resource, it's pretty simple. We just reference the process ID, and then we have an array of the step IDs in the order we want them to be in the deployment process. So here I just got them in the order that I set their names in. So we got 1, 2, 3. So I'll show you if I was to run Terraform apply, just to make sure everything's all up. Yeah, so it wants to create those steps and push them up with the new order. So I'll just say yes. So that's been applied. So now if I run Terraform apply again, I get no changes. Everything's up to date. So let's just say I wanted to reorder the steps. Before, as I was saying, in the old deployment process, reordering was a nightmare, and probably something you never actually wanted to do, because of how painful it was. But now we can easily just move one of the steps, and just like that, step 2 will now be the first step. So if I run apply again here, we'll see it picks up that change. There it is. So it wants to move the steps around. I say yes. And if I did a apply again, look at that, no changes. So that's a massive improvement over the old ones, over the old resources. So now we'll be defining some children steps for this deployment process we're building out. So here I have step 1 that we defined before, and I'm going to add 2 children to it. So the way I can do that is I create a new deployment process child step. We can see here that this is very similar to the process step. The main difference is it has a reference to the parent, which in this case is step 1, and it's also missing the properties object. So we only have an executions object, and this is because, as I said previously, the properties object in the old deployment process mapped to the step properties, where the execution properties mapped to the action properties. But because we flattened actions out, technically a child step is just an action. So there is no properties on it, it's only the execution properties. So here we have the step 1, and here we have step 2. They're very similar, just run script steps that write to the console. And here we have the step order resource for them. So you can see it's a different step order resource. It's a child step order resource. And this is mainly because it needs a reference to the parent step. And also here you define the list of the children in the order you want them to show up in the deployment process. So if I was to open up my console again and run a Terraform apply, you can see it wants to create these children, and I'd say that's all good. So we run that up, and it'll create those children in those orders. And again, if you wanted to change the order of the children, we can come here and just change that out. If you want to delete a child, you delete the resource and delete the child here from the list, like that. And you know what? Let's delete number 2. So we only have one child. So if I was to run that and do an apply, yeah, so it warns you that one of the steps is going to be removed. That's fine, so we can say yes. And as you can see, that's gone. And just to show, if I run a plan now, we should get no changes. No changes. So everything's all intact. So this avoids all the state drift that the old deployment process have, and it gives a very clean experience with the process for when you want to maintain it and add new steps, or delete steps, or do anything with steps other than the initial push. So yeah, we hope you enjoy that. Next up, I want to show the step template resource. This resource was created early on in the Terraform Provider project. The resource and several other resources were created to try to close the gap between the UI and Terraform. So essentially, anything you could do in the UI, we wanted to make sure you could also do within the Terraform Provider, within reason. So like some things, for example, don't make sense in a config as code context, because, you know, they might jump out to a third-party UI or service or something like that. So we tried to fill in as much of the gap as possible, so that Terraform can do almost anything the UI can. So step template was one of those missing features, and so all those resources to fill in those gaps have actually already been released. So if you pull the latest version of the provider, you could use step template today. So this step template here is a run script step, and as its base, and you can see I defined 2 parameters, parameter 1, parameter 2, and I use these parameters within the script body itself. Now, what I really wanted to show off here is if you tried to use a step template within the Terraform provider before, you might have faced the nuances that it had. So it wasn't the best experience because it would actually require you to not only say that you're using the step template, but then additionally you still have to copy over the parameters and properties into the step you're using the template in, which kind of makes the template redundant. So we really wanted to fix that so that it's easier to maintain your configuration files, and your configurations will be much smaller as a result. So you actually get the benefits of a step template within the Terraform context as well. So the way that we did that is for the new resource, process resource, we created a templated step. So this is the same as a process step, although it allows you to define a template within that step. And because of that, yeah, you get the benefits of a template. So you only have to define the parameters that you want to overwrite. Every parameter that's not set in this parameter list will just use its default value. And the execution properties, you don't need to copy them all over from the step template. They will automatically come over and be used here. So you get the benefits of the step template within the provider now. So I added this step to my step list so that it's now part of the deployment process that we crafted before. So let's apply this. So it wants to make those changes that we've made, so I'll say yes. And that's it. We now have the step template as part of the deployment process we crafted before. So lastly, I thought I'll just show the UI of the deployment process that we've created. So here's Dom's Pizza, and here's our process. And you can see we got step 2 being the first step, because you remember we reordered the steps, so that step 2 would be the first one. Here's the step we created using the template. And then we got step 1 with its children steps. You can see we deleted child 2, so we got child 1 here. And here we have step 3, which is just hanging out by itself. So yeah, this is one of the new resources that we created to try to improve the experience of the Terraform provider. There's several others that have already been shipped, but this one in particular is coming out as part of the V1 launch itself. So get ready for it.
All right, Dom, congratulations. I have to give you guys a clap for that. So well done.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for doing that demo, by the way. I know it was you didn't want to do it at this hour, but it's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to be reading HCL code at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Some of us do. Some of us do. So I think it speaks to the fact that one of the reasons why the original design for the process template was designed the way it was because we were thinking a lot about how people might share their processes between HCL and OCL, which is our config as code integration. And there was just no way to reconcile those two. There was too much state inherent in the way we did OCL that didn't align well with Terraform. So with Terraform, it's really important that you treat resources independently, because people wanted to do that. They wanted to move steps around, they wanted to remove them, they wanted to add child steps. And we thought, well, if they're going to define them and they want to be able to port maybe to OCL, we were kind of thinking, well, I was thinking, it would be nice if they could just take their OCL and just drop it in as an HCL sort of replacement. And that did not work at all. The Terraform provider would just freak out. And that was part of the reason why it didn't behave properly. And so Dom did what I ultimately did with the template variable, the tenant variables. So the way that we do tenant variables in the Terraform provider is similar to the way in which Dom did that for his implementation with the process template. So there you go. There's the whole backstory that's irrelevant, but the key here is that it works now. So there you go. I think I've said too much. I'll leave the stage.
No, that's good. I like the historical context. Thanks, Don, for the demo. I think that was super awesome, demonstrating some of our favorite new resources that we've implemented. Cool. One of the things to call out is that we're moving the Terraform provider to the official Octopus deploy GitHub repository. Why? We think it's no longer this experimental side project that we've been sort of hacking away at for the last couple of years. It always sat in Octopus Deploy Labs sort of on its own, just like that step 3 that Dom showed, just kind of sitting there. And as part of a V1 release, we wanted to say, this provider is an official integration. It's something we want to stand behind and say that we're going to be supporting for the future. And so we've taken the time to go ahead and migrate that over to the Octopus Deploy repository. What you'll have to do, you have to change the source for your state. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to email myself or Dom if you have any questions, but there will be a tiny bit of work for you to do. But yeah, this is part of our shift over to say this is an official thing now, and we love it and we support it.
Also state that there is an official guide on how to move that state over without losing it, so that you can move to the new provider when it's out without losing it in your state. It will stay intact. It only takes about 5 minutes to do.
Awesome. Yeah, Dom's put some work into making that process super smooth and easy for you to do as well. So awesome. Cool. The other thing to call out is there's quite a lot of documentation updates that are coming through with V1.0. One of the most sort of interesting or important areas that we've invested into is writing up a bunch of use cases with supported scenarios. So we've written down at least 5, and we're saying these are the best 5 scenarios that you should be using the Terraform provider for. And we believe that, if you're trying to go too far, deviate too far away from them, you might run into maybe some issues, but these are the 5 that we stand behind and we think cover the best use cases for Terraform. And they're documented with the exact things that we're creating, as well as code examples that you can copy from. We've also gone ahead and removed the warning that the provider is unstable. So if we're saying something's a V1.0 release and it's something we want to stand behind, we can't have you hopping onto the Terraform provider documentation and seeing that it's unstable, and you should be very careful about using it. So that's gone now. And the final one, which I think is going to be a huge uplift, is that all resources and data sources are going to have an example that you can copy. So you don't have to go in and guess what the exact required and optional things are that you have to pass through. All of them have an example that you can quickly copy and get started with. Cool. Final note, but in the past, we've not really had a strong stance on how you can use version control as well as Terraform together. So we've decided that, we kind of need to take a stance on it for V1.0, and we can't just let people just run into a whole bunch of edge cases, and we should sort of explain our stance and position on it. So when you're managing a deployment process and runbooks, you can either define a database-backed project and its process or processes in Terraform, or define a version code projects and settings in Terraform, but define the process in Git. We're not going to let you manage the process of a version control project in Terraform, and we'll give you an informative error message if you try. The reason for that is because we've historically never had this great stance on how these two things should interact. And we've noticed that our customers just run into a whole bunch of edge cases and broken state when you try and manage the deployment process through Terraform. There's not really a single source of truth in that sort of interaction, and Terraform can't really support or reason well about the changes that are made in Git and then have to be reflected in your Terraform. So we're saying, let's let version control do what it's best, managing deployment processes inside Git, and let's let Terraform do what it's best. Define a project and all the stuff around it in Terraform. But if you try and manage both of them, you're getting yourself into the wrong place, and you should work with them separately. Cool. And so a quick sort of timeline. So today's the webinar. By next Monday, we should have the provider officially out to V1.0. So that'll have all the documentation updates. It'll be stable. There'll be a few bugs, left to fix as of today. And then, of course, by mid next week, we'll have a blog post that highlights all of these changes and links out to all the new documentation that we've written, as well as maybe any extra ways that you can get in contact with us if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one there and throw it out to Q&A if anyone has any questions.
Awesome stuff, guys. Just to give people some just to further explain this, you'll find, as we mentioned, the repository up on GitHub. Here it is here. You can take a look at the code if you wish. We obviously have the issues listed, etc. So you can check this out up on GitHub, which is great. We still have the Terraform provider up on the Terraform registry as well. So this is typically how you'll go and download the provider. Is this going to change at all, guys?
Yeah, so there will be a new registry page.
Okay.
That we're working on that to get that out for
Okay.
the V1 launch. Yeah. So yeah.
This is not uncommon. Some popular providers like the Amazon provider and the GitHub, I think the GitHub or maybe the other providers have switched locations. They've gone from a labs project to an official project, and they've changed the location of their providers inside the Terraform registry. I don't believe there's a mechanism of deleting providers, and plus it would break stuff inadvertently if we did so. So we're just going to leave it there, and then we'll create a net new one. Okay.
Yeah, so the only way you can delete a provider is if you message HashiCorp, ask them to take it down. But if we did that, everyone who currently has a provider being pulled in
Reference.
their pipeline,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
will then break. So it's best to keep it there.
Awesome stuff. All right. So as we said before, this is live. You can confirm that. My iPhone says 5 in the morning. So there you go. If you have any questions at all for either Venk or for Dom, we're happy to take them here. Feel free to use the comments pane inside the wherever you're joining us from, YouTube, X, etc., and let us know if you have any questions. I have some questions. So so Dom, the changes that we went ahead and implemented for the process template, I assume these will work. Like you've tested this across a wide variety of types of steps, etc. The thing that always got tripped on when I was trying to do the implementation was the property bag. Has that changed at all, or is that still
Yeah,
the
so
key value pair thing?
We still got the property bag, still a key value pair thing, but what we did to help with that is we wrote a guide on how you can actually discover these key property values. So if you go to the UI and you define a deployment process, so you define what you want to define in like a demo project, there's actually a little kebab next to the save button. If you click that, you can download the JSON of the deployment process and have all the properties in there. So we wrote a guide on how you can discover those. So that will be released as part of the V1, that guide, to try to help with that process. Because, I understand that's painful, that you have these properties, you're trying to find a step, you don't really know what's required or not. So that's what we have for now. But in the future, we do have plans to expand on this and actually provide a proper metadata service for step properties. And this is just not for Terraform, this is for all our services, because you're going to have this problem of not being able to find properties when using anything related to Octopus. So using the API or the Go SDK, they're all going to have the same problem. So that's something we do plan to fix in the future to be very solid.
Excellent. Yeah, that was always something that tripped me up. I wanted to provide more help. I didn't want people, because some of those properties can be a bit esoteric, right? Like it's not just key value, like a simple value. Sometimes the value can be quite complex. And so
yes,
we were trying, and the thing about Terraform is that it can provide you that guidance if you provide structure around it. So by providing a resource around it, you could provide structure and then do validation. But it's just really difficult because we have a ton of properties.
Yeah, so the plan is once we do have like this metadata of all the steps, we'll be able to actually create a resource for every step type very easily and ensure that it works correctly. So that is part of the future plans.
Excellent. Venk, did you have anything you want to add there?
No, Dom's covered pretty much everything, which is there's a way for you to do it now, but in the future, we want to make that a lot nicer so you don't have to go almost digging around in Octopus UI. You should be able to intuitively find all of those properties without too much hassle.
Another kind of anecdote I wanted to share with folks is that the Terraform provider actually had a positive impact on our API. So one of the things that I remember seeing early on was when we were working on the Terraform provider, some people really got quite used to using it a lot and using it for configuring their instances with a lot of different types of resources. And I remember one particular case where a customer was using it to create a bunch of accounts. So as you know, in Octopus, when you create an account, there's lots of different account types and, there's lots of different users you may want to provision. And this user was finding an issue with the way in which they were provisioning accounts. They would provision like 500, 1,000 accounts. That's a lot to throw at an API because Terraform really has no breaks, really. I mean, it's like whatever you provide through the provider, it's going to go ahead and run with. And so we had to actually put some handbrakes on a few of the API calls because it was too fast. But the good news there is actually it gave enough of an imperative on the API team to improve the scalability of our APIs going forward, which was great. So thank you to everyone who had the patience of kind of suffering through this as we tried to figure things out. We didn't expect like 500 accounts to be wanting to be created at once. It wasn't something that was built for that design. So turned out to be a positive thing. So a lot of the APIs were made more robust as a result.
Yeah, on top of that as well, the Terraform work also improved our other integrations. So like the Go SDK has received many upgrades because of the Terraform. One of those upgrades being the ability to be able to have a single configuration and still work across multiple spaces when using the Go SDK. So previously the Go SDK, once you configured it, you could only use it for that space you configured it for. But because it doesn't make sense to have a provider configuration for every space, we've made the updates to that Go SDK so that it could be used as an independent tool like that.
So for those who are curious, when we talk about the Go SDK, we're talking about the Go client library, which is here. So you'll find us up on GitHub. This is at go-octopus deploy. And this is the way, yeah, of course, being a Go project, you have to have your own Gopher variation. That's a standard practice for Go projects. But if you want to use this for your project, and it's used a wide variety of different projects, this is basically, it underpins the new CLI, it underpins, obviously, Terraform, our Terraform provider, it underpins a bunch of other tools as well. But it basically gives you a means of accessing our API via Go. And so if you want to build on that, you can, but this is where the repo lives. Awesome stuff. Cool. I'm not seeing any other questions. So to prevent everyone going over time, which is fine, let's just go ahead and wrap it up. So Venk and Dom, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, folks, for any resources, you can reach Venk and Dom at these email addresses here. Do you guys have anything you'd like to say as a sign-off?
Just we're excited for everyone to have the V1.0 of the Terraform provider. Dom and the team have been working on this super hard, and we're excited for you to try it out and give your feedback on it. And of course, we're always open to hearing if you liked it or hated it, of course, and how we can improve it. So.
And just as a final question here, for any changes as well, I would assume or imagine that some folks will be able to track some of these up on our roadmap. I've always told people to go check out our roadmap as well. I assume that this one's going to be moved over to the release column soon. Is that right?
That's correct. I'll flick it over to released probably on Monday or Tuesday once we've officially launched, and then we're good to go.
I want to be there for that ribbon cutting. That's going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to this release for a long time. As I always tell folks, make sure to make this a bookmark, if not your homepage. Our roadmap is at roadmap.octopus.com. There you'll find a whole bunch of things that you can check out. We have our release features as well. If you're at all curious as to what we're building, this is the place to go. And so this is where Venk and the other product managers kind of hang out and talk about features, etc. So make sure to take that look. And you can also submit your own ideas. So if you're looking at this and you want to submit an idea around the Terraform provider, feel free to let us know. And you can vote with your feet. You can say, how useful or how important is this feature to you going forward, which is great.
Yeah, and we do take into consideration when people leave comments. A whole bunch of other features on there have been sort of prioritized or looked at in more depth once we've seen comments from people saying they're interested in it or they actually want to see more work done in that area. So definitely a tool to get the attention of product managers at Octopus.
Fantastic. All right, Venk and Dom, thank you very much for your time and attention. Really appreciate it. To all of you, happy deployments, possibly happy terraforming, I guess is the way we should say it. And we'll see you on the next webinar. Take care.